Claire for some talking.
Welcome, everybody. Hopefully you can hear me. If I can just get a thumbs up from someone that I'm coming through loud and clear. Great, thank you. Give just another moment to let people in before we get going. See if we can reach the 100 mark for participants, and then we'll launch. Make it one more to go. Come on. Who's going to be lucky 100? Maybe not. Hey, there we go. All right. We hit 100, so we'll get going. Okay, hopefully everybody can hear me. Thanks so much for joining us today. It's Thursday afternoon, and welcome to the Kirk webinar series for 2022. This one's entitled Engaging Faculty, Staff, and Students for Waste Reduction and Diversion. Happy summer, almost. It's not officially there yet, but we're pretty close. So yeah, again, welcome to today's presentation. My name is Corey Berman. I'm the Recycling and Waste Program Manager at the University of Vermont and a board member with Kirk, the College and University Recycling Coalition. Thanks for joining us today. I'll be your moderator. For those of you not familiar with Kirk, the College and University Recycling Coalition is a member-based organization that works to grow collegiate recycling and waste reduction efforts by fostering technical information exchange, educational support, and networking opportunities between staff, faculty, and student leaders implementing diversion programs on college campuses. Today's session is part of our free Kirk webinar series, which is designed to highlight innovative campus programs and provide trends and perspectives on a broad range of operational and educational topics related to collegiate recycling and sustainable materials management. Today's program is the third webinar in our 2022 series. Hopefully you're able to join us for the other ones. And as always, we'll have these up on our website shortly after this one is done. We do have a few housekeeping notes to go over. If you have problems with your audio or video during the webinar, you can visit Zoom's support center by visiting support.zoom.us. That's support.zoom.us. To avoid background noise, we've placed all but our panelists' lines on mute. We encourage you to submit questions at any time. Of course, please use the Q&A section to type us a note, and we'll read as many of these as possible out loud at the end of the presentations. For general comments or notes, please use the chat function in the dashboard. Copies of today's presentation slides will be available to download, and a recording will be available to stream within the next day or so on our Kirk website, which is kirk3r.org. That's CURC3r.org. Okay, now to the topic at hand. Campus engagement is often cited as the #1 challenge when asked what it is that we struggle with on campus. Due to the transient nature and diverse population of colleges and universities, it can be tricky to determine where to focus our educational outreach and overall engagement efforts. Should the focus be on students, directed towards staff, faculty? Do you work your magic on social media, or is face-to-face tabling events your preferred method? And how do you connect these dots between education, research, and operations? Even at schools with long established programs, campus engagement can be difficult, and because of that, recoverable materials often end up in the trash. This webinar will highlight 2 campuses and introduce ways that they're connecting with their community, both on and off campus, in an effort to increase their diversion rates, reduce the amount of waste coming onto campus, and educate folks on trending ideas like zero waste. In the second presentation, we'll look beyond campus borders and how this work connects with partners off campus as well. First up, I'm pleased to welcome and introduce Kristen Perina from Stanford University to share with us how Stanford is addressing campus engagement. Kristen has been with Stanford University for over 10 years as sustainability and utility manager for housing and dining. Kristen collaborates with Stanford's 15,000 student residents and staff to foster sustainable behavior change, reduce energy and water consumption, and waste production in over 300 buildings. Kristen previously served as the first sustainability planner for the city of Palo Alto and has also work experience in the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, California Environmental Protection Agency, and the Natural Resources Defense Council. She has a BS in environmental design and a BA in communications from UC Davis and an MPA in environmental science and policy from Columbia University. Please welcome Kristen to the webinar. Take it away, Kristen.
Am I reading between the lines of what you just said?
Great. Hi, everybody. I'm going to work on sharing my screen here.
That interpretation of what you just said.
All right, Corey, can you thumbs up? You can see my screen okay? Great. All right. Well, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. As he mentioned, I'm from Stanford University. I've been here for 10 years. For those of you who don't know, Stanford is actually the largest residential campus on the country. We're by no way the largest campus in the country, but I mean in terms of actually students living on our main campus. So I oversee sustainability in our housing and dining portfolio. We have almost 16,000 students living in about 300 buildings, as Corey mentioned. And my job is outreach engagement with these 16,000 students on how to live sustainably in our facilities and help Stanford meet its sustainability goals. So I do a lot of connecting and trying to connect with Gen Z. And really what I found over my 10 years at Stanford is it is constantly evolving, and it changes every single year. We have a new student population coming in, and their communication preferences are completely different from the students that came in before. When I started 10 years ago, I took my first group of student interns and started working with student groups, and I asked them, how can I communicate to you guys? How do you communicate? How do I get the word out? And I remember the first group of students said, you have to email us. If you don't email us, we won't get it, we won't come, we won't read it, we won't respond. And then the very next year I asked the same questions and they said, nobody reads email anymore. If you don't do Facebook and you don't send a Facebook event, nobody's gonna come and nobody's gonna listen. And it continued on like that every single year. This last year, there was even a new surprise. We actually had Stanford students that created their own app at the beginning of the year called Buzz. It's a Stanford student app. And within like the first few months of school, we had thousands of Stanford students. That's how they were communicating on this app called Buzz. And by January, they were off of Buzz and onto Fizz, which is what you can see on the left here. This year, probably the biggest controversy for us in waste has been over our to-go dining program that has kind of come in and out because of the pandemic. Excuse my voice. And sorry, let me grab a drink of water. There we go. Because of the pandemic, and they were talking about it on Fizz. So I really quickly had to engage with Fizz and our academic partners to figure out what students were saying regarding kind of our waste streams on campus and what their thoughts are, both negative and positive. So other places to look, I was asked what are great resources. There are definitely plenty of books out there on Gen Z. One of my favorite quotes is they instantaneously take in information and forget it almost just as fast. Our attention span, not just Gen Z, but all of us, is going down over time because of all of the things that we are engaging with. I do like this book called Gen Z Goes to College. I also love this book on habit forming, but really I think what's been the most impactful for me is this group that Stanford created. It's a community of practice where we gather people from the Stanford Alumni Center, from the Athletics Association, everybody across campus that we're trying to communicate to students, whether it was sustainability or not sustainability related. And we got together to talk about how do we communicate to this ever-changing kind of student population. And this is what's been really most powerful for me and what I suggest you doing as well. The first thing we did is we put out surveys. We put out surveys not just to students, but also to staff and faculty. And one of the first things we said was, how do you receive information? How do you want to receive information? And you can see across the different streams that they receive information very differently. You can see, on here, staff read the student report. Faculty, favorite thing is leadership emails. And then you can see what students respond to. The Stanford Daily is very high up on that list for students. The Stanford report is more popular with staff and faculty. Sorry, one more. And then we also asked them, how best do you retain that information? You could see again, what are your top sources for information, and you can see again, the Stanford report, leadership emails very high for staff and faculty, but students, have friends and colleagues that are more towards the top when you look at students. And so this was really interesting. But what was even more interesting for us was we actually pulled in groups of students from freshmen, sophomores, juniors, seniors, PhD students, master's students, and we put them in front of us, and we had these amazing panels on, how much information do you receive and what do you retain from that information, and what gets you engaged. And it was really fascinating. I think a lot of us think, oh, let's get them when they come to campus. If we teach them how to recycle and compost the first week they get to campus, then we're set, right? We're set for the next 4 to 10 years. But what we find is, and we're all thinking that, the athletics, associations thinking that, the alumni associations thinking that, their schools are thinking that. Let's talk to them that first week of school, then we'll be set. But what we realize is everybody's doing that. And so when we asked students to look at their emails, they were getting hundreds of thousands of emails the first few weeks of school. So how were they going to pay attention? We realized there was no way I was going to be able to engage with them the first few weeks of school. They were getting literally thousands of emails just in their Stanford accounts. Like, forget the J. Crew and the Gap and all of that stuff. Just from Stanford, they were getting thousands of emails those first few weeks of school. All that they remembered from the first few weeks of school were the people that they met. They would always pinpoint 1 or 2 people that they met. But what we did find in these interviews is that they're highly engaged before they come to campus, right? Students are very eager to know what campus life is like and what campus it's going to be like when they come to campus. So a good opportunity we learned from this is to, hit them with the email communication and the electronic communication before they come to campus is way more likely will reach them than after, those first few weeks when they get to campus and they're really excited and kind of overwhelmed with things. We also talked to them about emails. They pretty much said they only read emails if there's a grave deadline in it or a subject line, that makes them think there's a grave, deadline in it. And if they open it, if you don't get them within the first, line or two, it's over. And so we've thought a lot about our subject lines, what we put in emails. Just amazing information has come out of these working groups. So it's just a great strategy that I recommend for you, is to partner not just with sustainability folks, but everybody across campus, because we're all trying to communicate to that same population. And how do we do that when they're constantly changing? So my top 3 things that have come out of all of these working groups that we have done with students, books that I've read, my work with my student interns, is there's really 3 big categories that we've had a lot of success in. Number 1, we've learned that their number 1 resource is their friends. Number 2, they prefer experiential learning. And lastly, they love short animations. And I'm really looking forward to the presenters after me, because they are students from a different university. I love to hear their feedback on this and their experience, because it's different for different students across different universities. But I'm gonna show you kind of how we've taken these themes that have come out of this student working group and the research that we've done with the academic departments and how it's worked. So first and foremost, a waste-related project was at a dorm called Robley. We have one building where we have 300 students living. And, I'm going to date myself, but 20 years ago, I had an internship with the California Environmental Protection Agency. And I remember walking into the Cal EPA, one of the startling facts was there is no landfill in that building. There's not a single landfill bin. And I had to completely rethink everything that I brought in that building because there was no landfill bin. And that was 20 years ago. And so I really wanted to think about how I could apply that concept to Stanford. So we took a 300 student dorm called Robley, and we basically took away their landfill. And I worked with students on, we call it influencing the messenger, or influencing through the messenger. And we took a group of students and we incentivized these students to help this dorm survive basically without landfill. And we incentivized the few students to do outreach in their dorm, to check the bins, to do sorting events. And the 300-person dorm, you can imagine what happened. The first few weeks we had tons of contamination. But by the end of the 3rd and 4th month, We had a 300 student dorm surviving on a 96-gallon cart, like the same size that a lot of single family homes run on, right? And so kind of what spawned from this incentivizing the messenger was for years, students always say they loved competitions. So like energy dorm competitions, like let's compete between dorms for either waste reduction or energy reduction or water reduction. And what I found was our results weren't great when we did competitions. You know, we'd maybe save like 5% or 8% in waste or energy. And what I found was a lot of the people didn't even know that they were participating even when they won. And so we decided to flip that and said, let's not have this whole, incentivize the dorm. Let's incentivize the individual messenger, getting back to this number one resource is their friends. Let's do some peer-to-peer communication. So we incentivized this one that I'm showing on the screen is we ended up incentivizing 40 students that went out for winter break to try to get all students to turn off their heaters, turn off their lights, unplug their appliances before winter break. And what we ended up finding is instead of getting to 5 to 8%, we were just doing these kind of general competitions and general communications. When we did this peer-to-peer one-on-one communication, you can see on the screen here, we had 13 to 18% drops in our energy usage, saving $35,000 in about a 3-week period. So my message here is we really took their resource being their friends, and instead of doing these dorm level competitions and these very widespread communications, we incentivized their friends, right, to be the resource. And we saw big impact with the landfill reduction in that first example, and then in our winter break energy savings in this example. The other thing we've had a lot of success with is loud visuals, right? Again, overwhelmed with email. They prefer to hear from what we're hearing really lately is like on social media, they prefer to hear from their friends. They don't necessarily want to hear from me on social media. So where is my space, right, to get that attention? And I do that a lot with loud visuals. This alpaca character actually represents our move out program, which is happening right now. We have thousands and thousands of students that are moving out of our dorms. When I started here 10 years ago, we called it Green Move Out. And I remember surveying students and I said, how many people know about our Green Move Out program? Like nobody knew what I was talking about. Maybe 1 in 10 knew what Green Move Out was. After we worked with our design school and some academic partners, we did a lot of research with students and we rebranded it to Give and Go, which is, more about what students wanted to hear about. Or wanted to be about. But what we introduced was this very loud, cute alpaca character, which actually was designed by students. And we just put this alpaca character everywhere. It's on, this is the I donated, the I voted concept, We have these 6 foot, here, let me get my annotation out. We have these 6 foot tall alpaca. This is a cutout that we put in our dining halls. So when students walk into the dining halls to eat, they see a 6 foot alpaca looking at them. We've put this alpaca everywhere, very loudly where they're living. And now when I survey students and I say, have you heard of the alpaca program? About 10 in 10 students will tell you that they've heard of the alpaca program. We're actually in move out right now, and I'm going to show you an example. So this is what it looks like. We tell people, look out for the alpacas. So this is an example of a donation station. This is a picture I took on Monday. And you can see these cute little characters are peeking out, looking at students. And this is how we get their attention. And we generate over 80 tons of material that we get donated through reuse every year through this alpaca program and not sent to the landfill. We also offer it year round. You can see these are our a typical waste enclosure. And over here on the left, this is a year-round donation station, and you can see the cute alpaca character on the right there and on the top. Again, very simple. Forget Green Move Out, forget Give and Go, forget the words. Just look out for the alpaca. Loud visuals, cute character, and this program has completely taken off. Other things I want to note, as I mentioned, is the experiential learning. At Stanford, we're really trying to think about how we can reframe the waste experience. We surveyed thousands of grad students about their waste experience, and what they told us was it was icky, it was smelly, it was gross. We wanted to get in and get out of there. Whatever bin was open is where the stuff was going, and we wanted to leave as quickly as possible. So we just built 4 12-story high-rise dorm buildings, and I took the opportunity to do just that. Rethink that icky, smelly, gross experience that students say that they have when they're trying to get rid of their waste. And so I designed these rooms that you see on the upper right. These are the waste rooms in that building. And I hope you guys would all see, this is anything but that, right? It's extremely well lit. It's very clean. This mural on the wall is actually Stanford trees. And the concept is it's a windowless room that you're going into. So let's bring the connection back to the environment, right? When you put your waste into that hole, where is it going? It's going into our environment, right? So you see, you kind of have equal access to the landfill, the recycling, compost. There's even compost bag dispenser at the very end, but it's a very different type of experience. Sorry, my cat just jumped on my computer. It's a very different experience that students are having when they get rid of their waste in this building. This is our green cleaning program. We do a lot of research on it, which reduces waste from buying and purchasing chemicals and the plastic pollution from chemicals. Students can actually, in their laundry rooms, dispense a green cleaning solution to use as a laundry detergent and to clean their apartments. But the last concept I want to talk about here is convenience. Using the real estate you have. Again, students are overwhelmed with electronic communication. So what do I have in my disposal? I have the real estate, right? I have 300 buildings. All students have to do laundry. All students have to use the restroom. They're all going to those spaces, and that's my real estate, right? And so utilize your real estate. So on the top right here, you'll see in the dining halls, I'm pointing at our dining hall newsletter. This is super old school. We were doing like this in the 50s, right? Putting something on the tabletop. When I ask students how they learned about something, usually they tell me they read it on the dining hall tabletop, right? Or they tell me it's because I sometimes put posters up or mirror clings in the restrooms over top of the sink. So while they're brushing their teeth or washing their hands, there's like a cute, funny mirror cling on it, or in the restroom or on the dining table, in their laundry rooms, these places that I own and that I know they're going to go. Lastly, I'm just going to mention this machine on the left here is actually called a happy or not machine. So as students go in and out of their buildings, they can give me feedback on things like how they're feeling about their temperature, if they feel like they know how to sort waste. It's kind of like an immediate responses that we can get in their living environment that's convenient for them, and that I have control over. So I am going to stop there. I'm happy to take questions now or at the end, but I'm really looking forward to hearing our next presenters and their feelings on this as well.
Great. Thank you, Kristen, so much. That was wonderful. Yeah, a lot of good chats happening in the chat function. I'm assuming everyone can hear me, right? Okay. That was really great. We do have a couple of questions, which I will get to. The first couple of questions I'm going to combine into one, basically asking if you could further elaborate on the kinds of incentives that you provided to the messenger / influencers in those examples. What incentives did you use there?
Yeah, we used financial incentives. So when we reduce our landfill and when we reduce our energy, we save money, right? So I partnered with my finance department and I said, let's use, depending on how well they do, we can use a portion of those savings to incentivize those students. So, in the example of the energy one, we saved $35,000, and no, I was not able to distribute $35,000 to the 40 students. But we did give them, a nice financial incentive. Some of them are between, I think, $50 and $200 for their time. And in the waste example, some of them were interns, and then some of them also received, financial savings associated with the landfill reduction. Yeah.
Great. Yeah. So there's also a question in the chat about how you were able to pick those influencers. You just mentioned they were interns, maybe. Or were they employees, or were they volunteers?
Some of them were student. Yeah, some of them were student interns with me, but for the most part, I know most universities have sustainability groups. Stanford has Students for Sustainable Stanford. That's usually my first avenue because there's dozens and dozens of students that are involved in that organization. So I usually first do a call for volunteers through Students for Sustainable Stanford. In the case of that energy dorm example, I got 40 volunteers. Almost all of them were from Students for Sustainable Stanford. But so that's my first avenue, and then I'll go to other student organizations usually after that.
Right. Great. Another question is, how did you implement the one-on-one peer communication competition for energy savings?
Yeah, so like I had mentioned, we had done this in years prior, but the idea was a dorm to dorm competition, in which case there was very little student involvement. It was me sending out email messaging or Facebook messaging or social media messaging, like I mentioned, which didn't produce, as you know, I would get to like a 5 to 8% savings level. And so after doing all of this research on students, and they said the number one thing that I'm influenced by is my friends, that's where this got, well, how do I get friends to tell them instead of me, right?
Mhm.
And so that's where we went to, let's incentivize the friends. So we reached out to get volunteers, and we told them that we would incentivize them based on how well their dorm did. So they had an incentive to knock on every door and remind people to turn off and reduce their energy. And same with the Robley example. You know, they had an incentive to do that peer-to-peer communication with the 300 students in that dorm to get them to survive on that 96-gallon landfill cart.
Amazing. That's great. There's still a few questions, but I'm going to take one more in here, and maybe we can answer the others offline. Jake asks, how would you recommend starting a student sustainability program in a less sustainable university culture?
Okay. Well, I think, are you talking, I guess I would need to know, is it an internship program or you're looking for volunteers for something? But I think in a university, you have points of people who are interested in these. You know, I think of my own internship program, and I always, you know, when I first came here, I thought the people that were going to participate with me were going to be environmental science students or from our Earth Systems program. But I would say, you know, today it's like 1 in 20 are in that. I have data science, computer science, psychology majors that want to work on behavior change. I have design school students that want to work on like designing different types of programs and policies. So I think it's just in the way that you frame it. Like there's opportunities for everybody in sustainability. You know, all academic disciplines on campus can participate. You know, we have mounds of data, right, around waste and around energy. You don't have to necessarily be a sustainability guru to participate. And I guess, you know, think about how you frame it. You know, we have a psychology department that loves testing out messaging and how different types of messaging impact behavior. You know, they're not necessarily sustainability gurus, but that's their, you know, jam. That's what they love working on, and we've gotten really amazing work from that. So I guess if you don't have a ton of sustainability buy-in, just think about how you frame it and how you can reframe it to get these partners involved to help.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. That's really great. Yeah, I'm sure there's a few more questions you can answer offline or, you know, in the next part of the session. And sorry, I apologize if there is a little bit of background noise on my end. I am in a cubicle environment, so just over the next wall, I have a colleague who's working on some stuff right now. But thanks, Kristen. I am going to go back and go to our next panelist. Let's see if I can get this here. There we go. Okay. So now we're going to hear from students at Johns Hopkins Sustainable Design Practicum. Can everyone see this slide? Quick thumbs up. Just making sure we're good. Okay, wonderful. We have with us Elizabeth Emmett and Amy Borey. They're students in the Sustainable Design Practicum at Johns Hopkins University, located in beautiful Baltimore, Maryland. The fellows of the Johns Hopkins Sustainable Design Practicum are multidisciplinary graduate and undergraduate students who have partnered with local community land trust to transition Baltimore City to a zero waste future. Their campaign is centered on community development standards and urging anchor institutions like Hopkins to commit to diverting not only their organic waste tonnage, but also to upholding standards of operational excellence and equity. Wonderful. Speaking on behalf of the full team today are Elizabeth and Amy, who join us now, and we will hand it over to them. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much. So I'm Amy Borey. I'm an incoming PhD student and previously a master's student at Hopkins. My background is in biochemistry and genetics, and I'm currently studying environmental health. And I'll pass it over to Elizabeth.
Hi, everybody. I'm Elizabeth Emmett. I was just a graduate student earning my master's at MICA. and I joined the practicum as a designer, a visual artist and designer with a heart for social and environmental change. And just to echo what our previous presenter just said, our group really is multidisciplinary on purpose, and doing this process with so many people on the team, students, instructors, community members, and activists, I think has made all the difference and has made it a really dynamic process. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, a quick overview. As Corey was mentioning, we are part of the Sustainable Design Practicum. It's a joint initiative between Hopkins and the Maryland Institute College of Art, which is where Elizabeth is based out of. We're a really small team. We had some undergraduates, graduate students, faculty and staff from all different fields. My base research is nothing like what we've been doing for this project, and it's just been a joy to get involved in so many different things. So this practicum was an instrument to bring together these different institutions and amplify the vision of the South Baltimore Community Land Trust, which is a community-led group that has been fighting for environmental justice in Baltimore.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about our project and our goal, because in comparison to the last scope of looking on campus and looking for on-campus shifts in behavior around environmental issues of sustainability, our focus was really outward in a bigger visionary way and using our institution's influence in a different way, not student targeted. So in general, moving our society and infrastructure towards a zero waste future is one of the most serious and pressing ecological design challenges we face today. So as our team of designers was looking at this and partnering with a community in Baltimore who feels strongly about this, we're really focusing on the context that we're living in. So Baltimore residents, and particularly neighborhoods and communities of color in Baltimore, are bearing the burden of harm from our city's waste management practices. And so we did a lot of research around why this is and how this comes to be and what our role as an institution and students are in that. And then partnering with the South Baltimore Community Land Trust, which we're going to refer to as SBCLT for the rest of this because it's a mouthful. Learning about what SBCLT had in mind, our role was to partner with them and see what we can do on this larger scale. So their vision, beginning with a compost facility, is that we might use the land in South Baltimore to transform it into a resource recovery park, which is a really alternative waste disposal infrastructure that would starve our toxic incinerator in the city. It would create new jobs for local residents, sequester carbon, regenerate our air and soil, and produce healthy food, and eventually reclaim all of our city's waste as it became a full resource recovery park. And so thinking of that larger vision, hearing the community's vision for this community-led development, this is where our group came in, because a critical step in realizing this community-led development for our city is to get our anchor institutions like Hopkins and MICA and other large organizations to commit, again, not only that organic tonnage to the new facility to ensure that it can be developed, but to uphold these community standards of operational excellence and equity that would ensure the well-being of the people and the land in South Baltimore. And so our practicum of students, faculty, community organizers, all work together because we are part of one of the most influential institutions in our city and one of the big waste producers in our city. And so we've been working to open up a dialogue with these institutions and with Hopkins specifically to try to leverage that institutional influence to commit to supporting this vision. So that's what our work has been for 2 semesters now.
Yeah, so just to recap, our group of students has been working, a group of students plus community activists and faculty and staff has been engaging to find ways to hold our institutions accountable and look at what our responsibility is to the city as a whole. So to support the work of SBCLT and others, we've been engaging with students, faculty, and staff at other local universities and created the Greater Baltimore Environmental Justice Coalition as a mechanism to continue to amplify community needs and use university leverage and other institutional leverage to make these things happen. So we prepared a video that we'll share now.
Yeah, hopefully this video gives a little more context and detail to the types of interventions we've been doing. and gives a picture of the process so far. As students and faculty in the Sustainable Design Practicum at Johns Hopkins University, we've been working closely with the South Baltimore Community Land Trust to help make the vision of the Zero Waste campaign a reality in Baltimore.
Starting on our own campus, we have been examining our relationship to waste and urging institutions like Hopkins to commit to a zero waste future for Baltimore.
Working with Hopkins to support compost infrastructure for the city of Baltimore. We think it's really important for them to support this and, commit to promoting equity in the city and sustainability and following through with what they say they care about.
So we wrote this op-ed in the JHU newsletter to raise awareness at Hopkins about the zero waste movement happening in Baltimore and to hold our school accountable. We wanted to pressure our school to support zero waste infrastructure in Baltimore as a way to contribute positively to the city in a way that will actually benefit the communities.
With the support of the Hopkins Office of Sustainability and movement allies throughout the city, we started a campus chapter of the Post-Landfill Action Network and built relationships with student activists at other local campuses.
A small number of residents bear the burden of waste and harm, environmental destruction, and really damaging development, while a good portion of the city thrives at their expense.
Hi everyone, I'm Trishonda Campbell.
And I'm Brienne Martin.
And we were doing community outreach today about composting and about getting our city to actually get a local compost facility here. And just letting residents know that currently there's a pilot. It's not the end, but it's a start. And getting them to also sign on to a petition to get our food waste out of the waste stream that's being burned and buried.
When we have options like this, compost, recycle, incinerate, does that really tell us enough about where all of this goes? Does this encourage us to think in any way, for example, about what it means to have our waste incinerated? What that does to the atmosphere of our city? Who has to breathe in all the exhaust that comes from that massive facility in South Baltimore?
Baltimore has been addicted to burning and burying for far too long. We, as residents of Baltimore, need to question what we put the name of our city on and shut down the Bresco incinerator.
Working with SBCLT this school year has been such a huge privilege. As university students who aren't from Baltimore and likely won't be here for a very long time, it's easy to feel like there aren't ways for us to organize for the kinds of change we'd like to see in our institution.
I would like to see an equitable, sustainable, and community-led development that adheres to the 5 foundational community standards that is crucial for South Baltimore.
We want a clean, safe, and cost-effective operation, a community benefits agreement, a local hiring commitment, a labor peace agreement, and representation in governance. These community standards are essential to this vision of a South Baltimore resource recovery park, but we haven't seen any commitments made yet.
So the main thing that I learned is that zero waste doesn't just encompass reducing, reusing, recycling, composting. Zero waste is a lot more than that. It's about, eliminating the wasting away of human lives.
We have another vision in mind, a way to use the land in South Baltimore for more than burning and burying. We want a resource recovery facility in South Baltimore developed by and for the community that will allow our city to recycle, reclaim, or compost all of the waste that our city generates.
Anchor institutions in Baltimore, like Johns Hopkins, are starting to come forward in support of this vision.
There is a coalition forming, a growing body of collaborators across Baltimore who want to see a zero-waste future for our city that prioritizes community standards of health and equity.
I think the zero waste movement in Baltimore is just one step in the right direction to giving communities more power over the space that they live in, and allowing them to make the decisions that they should have always been able to make for themselves.
Through doing all of that, we found that progress is possible, and it all starts with just a little bit of willpower and a little bit of hope.
Thank you, everyone. Hopefully you can see through that video the connections that were made both on campus and off campus to, again, that broader vision, but the real life impacts of what we're trying to achieve, and how forming those relationships across discipline, across status, across communities in this city really was at the heart and still is at the heart of what we're doing. Although our first year has ended, this partnership and practicum will continue on because this is a long-term goal. And also, I hope that you could see some of the interventions that we did along the way, because part of this was organizing, part of it was researching, part of it was jumping on board with things that were already happening and supporting it. And along the way, we did things like write op-eds, and we did things like designing videos and infographics and images and organizing more people to base build. So it's a really dynamic process. And so there's a lot to say, but all this to say that because of this process and all those things we tried and all of this work, a dialogue with Hopkins leadership and the Office of Sustainability has begun and really is ongoing. And so we're grateful for those meetings we've had with leadership, being able to share voices and come up with a clear vision for the future of sustainable, equitable, and community-led development. We've been clear in what we've been asking for, along with SBCLT, for these community standards, as well as the commitment to tonnage. And so we really want to share that it is possible for students and faculty of an institution and community members to all be at the table together and to make progress. But it is slow, it takes time, it's dynamic and kind of exhausting, but amazing. And it will take longer than one school calendar. So we've been working really hard to design and develop several tools for other groups who are wanting to do this organizational work. We have a few already that we will share in a follow-up email, and we're developing more, as our previous presenter said, more loud visuals, more interactive pieces that a group can really work through the process on their own to see what does organizing for zero waste look like on your campus as compared to our journey. And so we're really excited to share those with all of you. But generally, systemic change we found is hard, and there's a lot of personal stakes involved and emotions, because even though you're working with an institution, institutions are made up of individuals. And so we found that our team really needed to stay focused on that larger vision of zero waste and supporting one another through the ups and downs of organizing for change. And because of our work, but we do know that this issue is now in the forefront and the minds of our institution's leadership, and that they are working really hard to discern what type of commitment Hopkins is able to make. So by pledging their support for the building of this alternative waste infrastructure, they really have the chance to put their material footprint and their public leverage in the service of a community-led vision for a more sustainable future. And we know that as soon as Hopkins commits, so many other big institutions will jump on board. And so at this point in our campaign, we're currently waiting with anticipation for a formal update and a formal public announcement of a commitment from Hopkins. And in the meantime, we're again developing all those interactive tools, which we will be able to share in the follow-up email to this sharing today, this webinar. So thank you so much. And we're really excited to answer any questions and share any more details that would be helpful.
Fantastic. Elizabeth, Amy, thank you so much. This was wonderful. You can tell it, you can read the chats, and you can just tell there's a lot of excitement about this. And what a great video. And I'm excited to also that Anand shared another video in the description, in the chat link. So want to point that out as well. First of all, I just want to thank you for joining us today and for letting us get a glimpse into what you're working on, because this is really great stuff. And I think I can only speak for myself. I know folks on this call are doing all kinds of great work across the country, but this is a really wonderful showcase as to how this movement on zero waste can tie into the community beyond the borders of our campuses, because we're so often focused on the work we're doing with our student peers, with our colleagues, our staff, our faculty, but so much of this work really is about the greater community. And it's also showing how the zero waste movement can empower communities as well, which is wonderful. And I'm going to get to one other question, but I'm going to kind of steal the spotlight here. And I want to tie in what you're doing and your last comment there, Elizabeth, how you said you're waiting for Hopkins for a formal sort of announcement, email, some sort of message to what Kristen talked about and how to get support for those leadership emails, which is at the top of her list in terms of what students and the campus will respond to. So I don't know if you could share sort of that experience in how you're fostering this movement and moving it up the chain, and how do we get to the point where that leadership is going to respond to the point where it's really moving the system forward?
That's a great question. I can start and then maybe pass to Amy for her perspective on that. Because what we found is that it's difficult no matter which way you slice it, and you can try different avenues and see what works. And sometimes organizing students work to a point, but other times putting a little bit of pressure, whether that's again through something like the op-ed we wrote, or we had a lot of students sign a petition. So we did an email blast and had not only students but alumni from Hopkins, and we raised all of this support just to show, look, there are all these people supporting this decision, please take action. And yet sometimes, depending on the way that hits, it can put the pressure you wanted, or it can ruffle feathers that were you meaning to ruffle those feathers or weren't you? Sometimes it doesn't matter, but you have to try to get the ear of who you're trying to speak with. And sometimes you can get a meeting and other times you can't. So we had to just pull a lot of different levers just to try to see what would work. And I think there are many levers people could pull, and it's just up to your group to think about what your vision is and your integrity and what your goals are. And we tried really hard to do those things thoughtfully and strategically, but also with the goal of we're all in this together. We're not trying to be on opposite teams. We're trying to collaborate with our institution to make change. So Amy, do you have any follow-ups on that?
Yeah, sure. I think just adding to that, like one of our community partners, Shonda Campbell, really drove this home, is that you can't take no for an answer, and you can't take yes for an answer either. Whenever you see action, that's when you can stop. And so the way we worked our way up was clawing, kicking, and screaming, and also just knowing who our allies are and knowing that we're all on the same side. But sometimes, even though someone's on your side, their hands are tied, and you need to find ways to untie those hands. So don't make enemies where there's not enemies, and keep your friends close, and really keep the vision that you want in mind, and push for that no matter what. So the op-ed, I think, was a huge turning point for us, and we got very lucky with the response to that and how we were able to move forward with it. And so with anything, there's a lot of luck, there's a lot of persistence, and crying and begging and pleading. So it's all kind of a stamina game in a way. Like, we're still playing the stamina game. So
yeah, and lastly on that point, I think something to name is that power dynamics are always at play. And so we as students hold a certain amount and don't hold a certain amount of power in these decision-making circles. And so it's hard to know when and how to use the power you do have, and when and how to leverage or push or pressure or ask for someone who does have more power and decision-making power, how to work those dynamic relationships. And all I can say, we've tried on all fronts to just develop that dialogue and develop those relationships to the best we can, and leverage all the power that Hopkins has towards I just want to say, like, one of our, somebody who signed one of our petitions just said, Hopkins, use your brilliance to design waste out of existence. And I just thought, yes, that is what we're all trying to do. Is we are this big institution, and I think we're all just trying to find a way forward to make it happen.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I love it. I love the passion. We had a discussion just yesterday here at our Office of Sustainability UVM about the passion and how it fuels so much of this work. And it's just fantastic. It's coming through the computer. So thank you so much. Another question that came in is if you could talk about how you worked with the folks in actual government, in the City of Baltimore government, as part of this, whether it was the county, whether it was the City Hall, if you could just speak to that for a moment.
Amy, do you want to go? Do you want me to?
Sure, I can take that. I think so we as students were not as directly involved with, well, we had multiple teams within our bigger team. And so we had some involvement with local government, but the bureaucracy is a bit difficult. And so you have to look at the voter base and who can leverage the governing structures. So we always invited the government to the table. The director of public works was invited to all of the big events that we had. There was a big demonstration in front of City Hall that we had, and the director of public works was there, and we put him in the hot seat and asked him what he's going to do about this. And by we, I mean Shashonda did that, and she put him right on the spot, handed him a mic, and was like, "How are you doing? What are you doing about this? Are you where are we on composting?" And so be bold. That's how we engaged with them. We just went for it and kept them at the table as much as we could. So.
That's great. That's great. Thank you so much. Well, this is wonderful. I really appreciate you being here, you both being here, and your team is doing a wonderful job. And I just wanted to, a point of clarification, the link that Anand sent earlier is just a link to the video that was shared here today. It's not a separate video. Although at some point I did see a separate video that was sent to us when we were planning this that was involved with the Baltimore Compost Collective, which was great too. They're doing some really fabulous work. So it's another organization to look into. And I just really appreciate you being here. I really appreciate Kristen being here. And I think I can probably speak that if folks want to get in touch with them, we're happy to share their contact information. And like I said, this webinar will be available for folks to see again. The Baltimore Compost Collective, to the person who just put it in the chat, Baltimore Compost Collective. I think I'm getting that right. Is that right? Amy and Elizabeth? Okay, great. Well, that's it. As I mentioned, today's webinar is the third in our series of 2022. The next one will be held on August 18th. So be sure and mark that down. It's going to be on developing institutional waste goals, which is really gaining a lot of traction across institutions. We're looking for our presenters for our October topic, which is successful free and surplus stores. Again, that's for the October webinar, and also the December webinar, which is food recovery and composting. So if anyone's interested in sharing what your institution is doing, please reach out to us. You can submit a proposal via the speaker interest form at our website, which again is curc3r.org. That's CURC3r.org. You'll also find recordings of today's webinar. Eventually that'll be up. Give us a few days to get up there, but there's the past webinars up there as well. One last time, please join me in thanking Kristen and Elizabeth and Amy. Really appreciate your time showing us all this great stuff. As always, these are always so wonderful, but it always gives us a lot more work to do. So that's great, but I know we all have some challenges. I already want to rebrand some stuff here based on Kristen's rebranding for the alpaca stuff. That's really cool. And again, look for these presentations at our website. And thanks everyone for joining us today. We're ending a few minutes early, but happy to stick around and answer questions and just chit chat. So thanks again, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day. That was really great.
Really wonderful presentations. Amy,
thank you so much.
I agree, and thank you.
I did, but I'm coming back. I'm doing the PhD in the fall, so I'll still be around pestering everyone.
Awesome. All right, well, take care, everybody.
Thanks so much, Kristen. Thanks so much. Hope you're feeling better.
Thanks. I hope I only lost my voice for like a second there. Hopefully it worked out.
That's good. That's good. All right.
Sorry
Thanks,
about that.
everyone. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.